The Colossus of Marusi by Henry Miller. If we had been torpedoed then and there, we would have passed like that in vomit and blood and confusion to the dark underworld. At that moment, I rejoiced that I was free of possessions, free of all ties, free of fear and envy and malice. I could have passed quietly from one dream to another, owing nothing, regretting nothing, wishing nothing. I was never more certain that life and death are one, and that neither can be enjoyed or embraced if the other be absent.
I love it.
Hi, I'm Corrin. This podcast is called The Ache, an ode to the existential ache of being human, that still small-voiced hugging inside every single one of us, prompting us to change, move, grow, become more of our authentic selves. This is Conversations with People who dance with the ache.
Okay, let's talk about compost. Let's start there because I know it's your life, like you're a big part of your daily life and a big part of your, I don't know, actually, I'm putting words in your mouth. I was going to say it's a big part of maybe your outlook on life.
I definitely think it's become that.
Tell me about it.
It's a very soothing, organizing principle for the world, particularly when things are feeling chaotic. The practice of composting is just very grounding, no pun intended. It just it's a tactile encounter with the fact of death, which is inevitable and pervasive, and it just constantly reminds you to let go of things. With the piece you read at the beginning, with life, with birth comes the inevitability of death, and this concept of those two things are very closely linked. Yeah.
And I do love compost specifically. My experience with it, which is thanks to you because you taught me how to compost. My experience with it has been, I think the thing that is very striking to me is that it is so nourishing. The decay, that aspect of the death, quote unquote, of the, vegetables and the trees and us and bodies and everything, it becomes something that ultimately is nourishing and ultimately leads to new life.
You're watching something die and contribute itself to ongoing life. It's a very decentering practice. If you think you matter a lot, and we all suffer from thinking we mean more than we do and getting lost in really small things that feel very large from that perspective. Composting all the time is a nice reminder that the greatest utility you'll provide is as dust to something else, or just the ongoingness of something that's bigger than you. And I think it can be very existentially frightening to people to consider that, unless you're an active composter or gardener who's completely immersed in the process, and then it's not at all scary. It's very beautiful, and you feel very honored to know that that's your role, that's your role in the world, the universe even.
Have you always had a comfortability with the concept of death and decay and
No. I always loved horror films and scary stories, and I had a young love for Stephen King and Dean Koontz and scary books that I would read, and then as I got older that transformed into a love of horror films, and I guess there was always a fascination with taboos and transgression in a certain way. And so I am not surprised that I ended up as an older person being receptive to the practice of composting. Also, composting just feels like a refuge from a pressure cooker of a world where everything feels like it has to be perfect and pretty and nice all the time. And I've just never really felt like I'm very good at that. And compost is a way of like leaning into it, I guess. I've always really felt out of place with the world in that way, and compost is a way of claiming a stake where the point of my existence is that I'm out of place. It's not, it like transforms it from a transgression into a purposeful utility.
It's funny that it's like, well, I get that too, because I talk a lot about shadow integration on the podcast, so certainly the listeners are sick of hearing me talk about it, but
I bet they're not.
But it seems like that, like a lot, if it's this aspect of yourself that, you know, caused you some kind of feeling of being like, oh, I like don't fit or whatever, but then you start composting, then you start getting, it becomes like this badge of honor. It becomes this like,
that's what I mean. It transforms it from like transgression to badge of honor. Perfectly said. Where it's the point. There's a reason why I'm always dirty and don't have nice clothes and don't fit in, and because I have this other thing I'm doing that merits all of those characteristics.
Well, and it's funny to even describe it as transgressive when it's maybe potentially the most normal thing.
Yeah.
But we've created this world that's so far from our waste and that's so far from death, and we've put this like barrier in between ourselves and this thing, but you're in touch with something that's actually the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah, it can be very alienating. I will say that the last 5 years of composting and working with the soil every single day has really impacted my perception of aging overall. And as different procedures and forms of plastic surgery become more and more affordable and accessible, and more people are undertaking them, I feeling very alienated from the idea of like needing to look very young and the same all the time. It seems very bizarre to me.
Yeah, because we live in a state of constant change. Like, wouldn't our bodies also change, or our faces? Like, it is funny that we cling to. This is literally what I wrote about in my Substack too.
I can't wait to read it. Sorry.
Why are you sorry? You were literally driving to come be on this podcast. But this clinging to a need for assurance or a need for certainty.
Yeah.
When all we do in this life and on this earth is change and uncertainty and change and uncertainty, and almost to the point that change and uncertainty is certainty in a way, because you're like, okay, everything will die, everything will change.
You put the Octavia Butler quote, didn't you?
Yes.
The only God is change.
Of course. Another friend on the pod, Joe, he has God is changed tattooed on his body.
Oh, yeah. Which is funny. That's
it.
funny for a tattoo, honestly.
Yeah. Yes. Permanent.
Yeah, it's very bizarre when I talk to people and they seem very proud of themselves for spending like thousands of dollars and like unimaginable hours of their time devoted to the altar of youth, kind of, where it just seems very bizarre. I'm like, you could just not spend any of this money or time, and just there's like one leverage point for you to work on, which is not caring, and it's totally available to you, as impossible as it might seem in the moment. You could just not give a fuck and do so many other things with your money and time, but you're proud of yourself because you figured out all these ways you think to like never look older.
Yeah.
It's a very bizarre way to spend time, I think. I'm going to get slaughtered for saying this.
I don't care. Go right ahead.
It's extremely, extremely unwelcome and unpopular to advocate for not going for youth-oriented procedures.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been somebody that up until this point for several years, probably starting in like 2021 to like 2023, I was getting Botox. I stopped getting Botox because I was like, what the fuck am I doing to the rest of my face by freezing like certain... I just learned more about anatomy and was like nervous about like, what am I doing to the rest of my face? I'm someone that spends too much time also devoted to trying to look younger. Yeah. And it's something that I'm coming to terms with on my own. And it's a perspective that, hearing your perspective over the years, because, you know, obviously we were roommates, I know your perspective, and hearing your perspective has always given me so much freedom
that's so
to
nice
hear
to
it. Because it's like, yeah, who the fuck cares? You know, and sometimes you do care, and sometimes you devote all this time to it. I mean, I drink colostrum every morning in the hopes that it'll make me, you know, have elastic skin and also like feel better.
Yeah. I mean, not caring, or acceptance is lifetime work, but it doesn't have to be lifetime hard work. It can be the most unimaginable freedom. I would say that, you know, I'm almost 40 now, and...
Are you?
Yeah. And every once in a while I'll have moments where I feel insecure or I notice a change that's uncomfortable, but that's really, honestly, increasingly rare for me. And more often I just feel this incredible freedom about the incredible freedom of acceptance. It's just it's so wonderful. And there's no procedure you can pay for that's going to be the same as, is going to feel as free and good as just accepting yourself for who you are.
Absolutely.
And how you look.
Absolutely.
But it's work and it's hard. And I think a lot of people will protest and say, but it's so hard. And I'm like, the hard is the point. The hard is what makes it good. I think I just accidentally quoted Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own, but the hard is what makes it good. The hard is what makes it great, is what he says. Yes. But I feel that way. And I think people get confused that I'm judging them for their choices, and I never ever am. Like, I'm never judging any woman for any choice she makes. She's allowed to do whatever she wants. I just think we don't authentically live in a world where either choice is actually acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable to just get old at this point. I would love to live in a world where both choices are equally valid, and we don't yet. So I just try to constantly imagine space for others to opt out.
I love it. And I think you choosing to opt out and you choosing to do this work, this difficult work of accepting yourself and like facing that and being in the fucking death and decay day after day, is freeing for people. Well, it is for me to watch you live and like witness your journey. I love to see it.
Two things I have to say really fast. One is, like, it's so tempting all the time to make money off compost by illuminating to people how healthy it is for your skin. Because I swear to God, I could come up with some kind of like bougie, like microbiome replenishing earth bath for people that would authentically work to make your skin like very, very healthy, because you're replenishing like microbial diversity and like
because you do have amazing skin.
Thank you. It's probably compost. And
it's all that death.
And like not wanting to play into that anxiety. And the second is just a reflection on, like, I'm in a community of people where getting plastic surgery and procedures is like more the norm than it's not. And often the women in that group will make these comments, and they're saying it lightheartedly, and they're trying to be funny, but they'll be like, oh, I'm like always telling women, like, I'm in my 40s now, and like I started filler when I was 40, and I'm always telling everyone younger than me, like, you got to start earlier, got to start way earlier. And I'm just like, I know they're joking, they're not joking. I know they're being serious, but they think it's funny and they're helping these younger women. But I'm like, it takes every ounce of my restraint to not barge in on the combo and be like, that's disgusting. It's disgusting for you to say that to a young woman.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you?
It is wild, like, especially living here in LA, right? Because most people are getting something done.
Totally.
And like you said, like, that's totally fine. Like, if people want to do that, great. Fuck yeah, more power to you. However, one thing that I've noticed, just jumping off of that and being like, you know, the push of it, the push of like advertisers, med spas that do these types of things, people around you getting it and looking, you know, great, and you being like, oh my God, I like want that, or whatever, certain people feeling that way.
It's so hard because I'm empathic to the pain people are in and how hard it is and how much pressure there is. But when people tell me, but it's so hard, I'm like, that's not a good enough reason to me to not do something. Like, I just, like I said before, the hard is the value of it. Going through it, that's the growth. That's the spiritual deepening. It's really important work to do, and I genuinely worry on like a high level, social, culturally, what it means for us when we're so afraid all the time and never forced to confront it. Like, we never have to confront it. And I think the confrontation is very important, and I worry what happens when we are like almost chronically opposed to it and emboldened in that by like all the machinations of capitalism as they intersect with these like existential fears we have.
This really reminds me of like a thought that I keep having, and I think I've probably discussed with a couple of people that have come on, which is like, I feel like we feel now that certain things are so hard, like because our lives have become so easy in a certain way and convenient, and like there isn't a lot of daily like friction in like our external lives. So the things that feel hard, dealing with aging or dealing with like, you know, interpersonal stuff or whatever it is, like spiritual stuff, like there's so much more room for that stuff to be, I'm going nowhere with this, I'm just pontificating, but there's so much more room for that to be difficult, I think, because we don't have to like go kill our food.
We definitely live in a moment where the idea of friction or difficulty is seen as like a disease to eradicate. I mean, all of tech culture, which has kind of eaten the world, is all about like the frictionless experience. We're really saturated with this idea that if something is hard, it needs to be eliminated or solved for, instead of maybe understanding the utility of friction, not just in the sexual sense. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, that too.
But
don't want to eradicate everything that's hard.
But I just think we should step back and question the premise of like making everything as easy as possible all the time. I mean, there's so much value in so many ways through our lives of needing to do things that are hard or challenging for us in some way. Learning to approach somebody who's a stranger and strike up a conversation with them, learning to like speak in public and address a room and whatever, you know, overcoming these phobias and fears, putting ourselves out there, but also needing to embrace and change and and the inevitability of it. I mean, I'm such a daughter of the Ernest Becker denial of death and Eric Fromm, like this, and I mean, not just those guys, but so many philosophers and philosophical frameworks are built around like the great human journey is built around our fear of death and our eventual acceptance of it. Like that being like the core feedback loop that like feeds all of our pathologies, but also and structures all of our society and underlies everything that's great but also hard about us. It's like the great point of life is confronting the fact we'll inevitably die and then doing it. And I'm just such a daughter of that thought that it registers to me as very, very bad if we're committed to being so afraid of it. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm right or like perfect. It's just I'm being totally transparent about where my values are coming from.
Yeah.
And I get sad watching so many people I know unknowingly express to me so much anxiety about their appearance, concealed inside like their pride about their sort of anti-aging routines. And it does register to me as bizarre.
Yeah.
But, you know, I get it though. Like I went to the Oscars last week and was the first time I've been in like a really high pressure, high scrutiny situation where how I looked was like a really big deal. And at some point when I was like getting ready 2 days before, I made a joke. I was like, I like now understand why like women are mentally ill. I was like, this is so much crazy pressure. Like getting ready started like a month in advance because I was like trying not to eat so much. I was trying to exercise. I was like had a skincare routine a friend provided for me so that my like skin would look nice for the like to be on camera, like, you know. And I was joking that in that moment, I was like, oh my God, this is making me question all these like deeply held beliefs I had. Because if someone approached me on the street right now and was like, do you want free Botox? I'd be like, give me it to me. Because it was so much pressure. And I don't live a life where I'm in a situation where that kind of pressure is bestowed upon me very often.
Yeah.
So I'm not dealing with it head on in the way so many women who are like on TV or in public or public figures have to be. So I just do want to emphasize, I totally fucking get it. And I do really get how hard it is. And yeah.
Yeah, no, it is for sure.
Crazy, the pressure.
It is so much. Okay, here's my question to you. I'm kind of circling back to a thought that we had earlier, because I asked if you had always felt this acceptance. You said no. However, it was acceptance of death. However, you then followed it up by saying like, but I had this fascination with like Stephen King, these like horrific books. I too was reading a lot of Stephen King as a child. It's no wonder that I make horror films now. Yeah. But like, what was your journey like with coming to a place where you began to accept that?
I think I crashed and burned in my life and was like in a really unhealthy place, and I was just trying to find my way out of a hole that I wasn't even sure how I'd ended up in. And I wish I had a straightforward answer for this. I really don't. I got to a really bad place and I was really struggling and I was very unhealthy, and I kind of was operating on this intuition that I just needed to remove as much noise from my life as possible. So I did quit a job I had. I left a city I lived in. I left a relationship I was in. I did end up in Los Angeles, and I didn't really have any plan. And I don't know. I remember I moved into a friend's place in Highland Park, and there was a pretty private front yard, and it was very quiet, and COVID lockdown happened like 2 weeks after I got here. And I would just walk outside every day and walk barefoot in the soil. And that was just the only loop I was like living off of at the time. And I don't know, compost felt like, getting into compost and dirt and rot and decay felt like such an escape from pressure and expectations and the absolutely uncontrollable level of like branding that the world is imposing on us right now. Because compost and dirt just, you can't really, like, you can't, like, it doesn't work. It's not, it just looks how it looks, and there's like one photo you can take of it, you know, and then you've took the photo. It's just not inherent. It's just like, it felt like this inoculant I'd found against everything that was overwhelming me at the time.
And you came from like a way more high pressure type of situation. I mean, I don't know what you're doing for work now, but I know you were in tech and stuff before, right?
Yeah, I worked in tech and I worked in federal government. And yeah, I'm sure, I mean, there's a version of life where I had made some different choices where those jobs would have been fine for me, and maybe I would have been successful and would have been one of those women who's getting Botox and being on television and stuff like that. I don't know, but that wasn't the path I ended up on. I went through some crummy stuff and I retreated from life for a while, so.
And I met you like closely after that, right? Because did I meet you in 2020, 2021?
It must have been 2020 because I remember I had to move in it would have been 2020. Oh my God. Because I had to move during COVID, and I remember being very scared because it was pre-vaccine. We still didn't know anything.
We were meeting right around when the first vaccine was coming out, I think, because I remember coming down after you'd moved in and people were getting like the first shot, but we like met outside and you were having people over in like the back area.
It would have been 2020. Yeah. And so I was like really just still psychotic then emotionally, even though I was trying really hard to act normal and bury it all. Yeah. It was like a mess.
Bury it all, composting.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been better for me if I had buried it like that.
Yeah, buried it in
that would be called processing.
Processing. Yes, you're right. Yeah. But it came up. But everything came up for you even with the buried, and you just worked through it, or?
I feel like I moved to LA thinking fresh break, clean slate, everything's going to be fine now, and thought I was over the hump of whatever I'd been going through, but I still kind of had I still had to face down the final boss. I had one more set of terrible, awful mistakes to make before I was going to actually be forced to fully confront the totality of the shadow, I guess. Or just I had more mistakes to make before it was absolutely inescapable to really deal with some shit for myself.
Yeah.
Which, I went through a breakup a year and a half ago, and it was a real big forcing function. And I think I just burned alive for almost a year after that breakup, sorting through all of the things that led up to that moment and just trying to kind of reorganize and refresh internally. Really, really confronting some things that I had never fully processed, really confronting certain self-destructive patterns, really confronting the types of things you just hate to realize or think about yourself. And it just took a long time.
Yeah, it takes the time that it takes. And I think, at least in my experience, any of the shadow aspects that I've needed to confront so far in my life have knocked on the door, knocked on the window. If I'm not coming,
they burn the house down. Yeah,
they're gonna put me through a crazy initiation. They're gonna be okay, bitch, time to burn. Yeah. And it's it's gonna happen. And it's I think now I'm getting a little better about coming to the door earlier, but not always. There's still, it's taking it is that practicing of death. It is that practicing of, cool, I'm now burning down in the emotional house of my life, and I'm going to rebuild, and those ashes are going to be so nourishing. And but in the moment, you're in the tower card moment, just being oh my God. But I don't know, so far in my life, in my anecdotal experience, it's really led to positive things, and it seems like it has for you too.
I'm just laughing because I'm sure I'm in the middle of making some other mistake that I'm not conscious of right now, that I'm gonna reflect on, and some future version of myself is gonna reflect on and be lol, it's so funny you thought you were over it, because you were in the middle of reliving that pattern in that very moment,
But isn't that
acceptance
the beauty?
Is
yeah,
knowing that and really trying,
yeah.
But
yeah, no, it's the experience of life. It is, like you said before, I think there is this conditioning that things aren't supposed to be difficult for some reason, which I have no fucking idea why we think that, because look at the world since the dawn of time. People are it's such a crazy time in history, and I'm yeah, but remember all these other times in history that were also insane. And
I love reading history books for this reason.
Yeah.
I always, whenever I'm in a situation where someone's what's one thing you'd recommend for a young person, I'm just read history books. Read history books and be friends with people 10 years older than you.
Yeah, because you
really
realize
helpful.
it's not a singular experience. It's not we're all having the same experience. I've never been a huge consumer of a lot of different philosophy material. However, I've come to the same conclusions, without needing to read it. Now I'm reading it later on in my life and going, yeah, of course everyone was fucking thinking about this. I'm not having any new thoughts. This is the human experience.
It is really interesting to read histories of philosophy versus the philosophy directly, because then you can get a handle on the context those philosophers were operating in, and how they were socially and what world events they were responding to, what was happening in their lives when they suddenly arrived at these conclusions about how the world works. It's just very fascinating. I wish I could remember her name right now. I think her name is Sarah Baker, but she writes these wonderful histories of philosophy that I really am absolutely addicted to. I think she's written 2 of them. It's so revelatory to know what these great philosophers were doing in their personal lives at the time they were arriving at whatever conclusions they did. It's very illuminating, I will say.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I need to get on that. Sarah Baker. We'll look it up and we'll link it in the show notes for sure.
Let me just really quickly make sure.
Cassie's looking it up right now.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
No, Sarah Baker is an actress.
Okay, not
sorry.
Sarah Baker.
Not Sarah Baker. Bakewell.
Bakewell!
Sarah Bakewell. She's not a baker, but she bakes well. Anyway, Sarah Bakewell is very accessible.
Cool.
Fun.
That's always been the trouble with me is like, I don't know not the trouble, but the experience that I've had. So I was an avid reader as a child. Avid. I was reading Dante's Inferno when I was like 12, and I was just like obsessed with like medieval literature, and I was like a child. And then I don't know what happened. I moved to LA when I was 18, and I stopped reading as much and got swept up in life. And now I'm reading a lot more, but I've noticed I'm like, how was I was able to like focus and intake a lot of these like more dense books when I was younger. And then now, you know, I have more context. I have more, you know, understanding of vocabulary now, and it's more difficult. I think just maybe the social media or like just the attention span being shorter. It's a slower process for me to read stuff that's especially denser.
I do really reflect on growing up and how pre-streaming, pre-personal computers, pre-phones, I would just read every night before bed. And it just seems so crazy now.
Yeah. Me
to
too.
Just go to bed and not have any idea what was going on in the world because you had no mobile form of access to information.
Yeah.
And you would just read a book, fall asleep, wake up, and you got your news by reading the newspaper or turning on the TV in the morning.
No, it's true. I mean, I remember I've always been like a dreamer. I've always in nighttime. Except I have primarily nightmares. I don't I get scared, but not, I don't know. It's probably my fascination with horror. A big part of it probably comes from the fact that I've always had like intense dreams, intense like nightmares. But I remember like as a child, I would read often and was attracted to like scarier, you know, books, or like why the fuck was I reading Inferno? And you know, having these dreams that were so visceral, and then I would wake up and I would remember the dream and I would like think about it, and I would be like straightening my hair for school and putting my like dark eyeliner on and getting my push-up bra on and like not knowing what was going on, getting ready for school, you know.
Oh, youth. Different world we used to live in. There was something I was going to say that went out of my head when you were saying that. Oh my God, what was it?
We're talking about reading before bed. We're talking about like waking up, having no idea what was going on in the world.
Oh, it totally went out of my... Oh, I haven't read any of like the popular lit on attention. I feel like there's been a bunch of books that have come out recently like about attention as psychic phenomena, but I will say in my experience, attention is a muscle like any other muscle, where if you work it out, it gets stronger.
Yeah.
And I also will go through phases where I have a ton going on and a million deadlines and a million projects, and it's very hard to concentrate on like denser material if I'm trying to read it and actually get something out of it. So I have to spend a few days really forcing my brain to focus and settle, and then it kicks in again. It just takes, attention as a muscle. You gotta exercise it or it atrophies.
Absolutely. I feel fortunate that I work in film and that I write. You know, I think that's probably the thing that's like saving my attention, because Lily and I write, you know, most weekdays for 3 to 4 hours.
That's so great.
And so we're not really on our phones, and we're focused and we're concentrating and we're thinking about story and we're writing. And yeah, we've been able to like make a lot of things, as I feel like my attention span is there as like an output. Like I can be super focused, writing, output, editing, working on the podcast, whatever. And then when it comes to like the input, I'm able to like read, but my brain just, like you said, it's not used to it. The muscle's not worked out.
But also your brain is maybe oriented around a different task, which is totally fine. Like, whatever. When I have long days where I have to do a lot of writing or thinking about something, all I want to do at the end of the day is shut off and watch compilations of dogs being cute on Instagram. It's
Love
like
that.
such a good come down.
Love that.
Or I've been watching Seinfeld.
Ooh.
It's which I've never seen before because I grew up without television.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We had a TV in the house, but we didn't have cable.
Okay.
So we had terrible reception and like 3 channels that were mostly boring.
Where did you grow up?
Petaluma.
Okay.
My parents just didn't. It wasn't a thing. My parents just didn't really. We didn't have cable. We didn't have TV. It wasn't a part of our lives, but they never really made a thing about it, so I never noticed. I don't know.
Yeah.
People are always like, didn't you want to, like, people ask me how I felt about it, and I'm like, I don't remember ever really clocking it. I never really like thought twice about it.
Where you went to regular, like, public school, right? Or did you go to private?
No.
Okay. I, for some reason, had it in my head that you might have been homeschooled. I was homeschooled.
No, I went to public school.
I did in high school. I mean, I did in elementary school, and then I got pulled at the end, and then was in homeschool during middle school.
Oh my God.
And then my parents were worried that I was going to do something bad,
You
which
were.
I was, and I did, even though I was homeschooled.
Good for you.
So I was sneaking out, you know. Man, they put me in the basement room that had the fire escape. All I had to do was pop out the screen and just pop right up. Like,
yeah, I did that in
come on
high school
now.
too.
What do you
I
think?
was never getting away with I was never doing anything bad though. I was just like off on some adventure. I was so wholesome. I didn't do anything. Like, I was just like running around driving, like looking at meadows. You know what I mean?
That tracks.
You know, and my dad was very, very strict with me when I was growing up, and so it was very scandalous that I was sneaking out of the house at night. I was popping out my bedroom window and climbing over the fence.
Yes.
And
Did you get caught?
no, once I almost got caught though. Whew, and I would have been screwed. But I wasn't doing anything. It's not like I would just drive around alone and look at stuff, like, and just love the adventure of being awake when no one else was awake. And Petaluma was still pretty rural when I was growing up, and there was lots of abandoned ranches and old cow pastures, and it was like just so fun to one time I drove down the main road running through my town is called Eli, and there was the Eli extension, which was a portion of the road that ran off the edge of town and like through just all these abandoned like farmhouses. And I was just driving down it, and these are huge barns that are completely rotted out and have been like not used for who knows how long. It's super haunted seeming. I don't know why I thought at 4 a.m. it would be fun to drive down there as a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, sorry. But the edge of the road gave out, and my car went down into, like, I got stuck at the very, 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 very end of the road, like 3 miles from civilization, and I'm just surrounded by the decaying architecture of these barns, and oh my God, I was...
How did you get out?
I called my best friend like 100 times. She eventually picked up the phone, and I was like, I'm trapped. And I was so scared, and she was laughing at me so hard, being like, you're so stupid. And then she drove out to get me with her dog, and I just remember her pulling up, opening the door, and being like, get in, let's go. Because when she got out there, it's so scary. My car's bottomed out in this like cul-de-sac, and there's just all these absolutely terrifying rotted out houses and like weird sounds and owls, and it was horrifying. Anyway.
Oh my God. Ooh, I feel like the town that I grew up in didn't have like, it wasn't quite old enough to have like too much decay like around. Like,
Petaluma had like a old-fashioned haunted house called Haystack Landing.
Ooh.
Like movie level, old school, like legendary old creepy house, Haystack Landing, that one day mysteriously burned down.
are you serious?
Absolutely.
Just like out of nowhere.
Petaluma
it was like,
is a haunted ass town. That's why I was into horror stuff as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in like the equivalent of what's the town in Beetlejuice? Or whatever. Yeah. It's like a Beetlejuice house. That's my town.
I love that. The town I grew up in has a nuclear plant.
Oh, scary.
And it's like weird. The vibes are weird where I'm from, but not necessarily haunted, just the strange, and like the like feeling that anything could happen at any moment was kind of like how I felt often in Tri-Cities.
Scary.
And I always felt more scared. Everyone was like, oh, you're going to move to LA. It's going to be so scary. And I'm like, no, I was terrified in Tri-Cities.
You're like, no. I just
no.
forgot, actually, Winona Ryder lived in my hometown for a while, speaking of Beetlejuice.
Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing.
She hated it.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about Petaluma.
There's nothing to know. It's such a tiny town, and it carries such a huge national footprint.
Yeah, it's famous.
Yeah, because like all these famous deaths happen there. Polly Klaas was murdered tragically in my hometown, which became a national incident. The lead singer of Sublime like played their last show in my neighborhood. It's rumored the drugs that killed him were sold at the venue in my hometown. Like, There's like the cults there. There's just so much weird stuff that happened in Petaluma. And it's a population of like 60,000.
Yeah.
Such a small town.
Wow. I mean, I love that as your origin. It feels right. Somehow you getting trapped amongst the decaying, like, the rot.
So scary. But anyways, the whole point being I was never really trying to get away with anything. I just wanted to have my little adventures.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is something to what we're into as kids often becomes like the thing when we're older, if we let it. Like, you know, you wanted to drive around and look at your meadows. You're like the soil girl now. Like it makes sense, you know. I was always into sex. Like I was obsessed with sex. Like now what do? I make movies about sex. I'm an intimacy coordinator. Like that's my whole thing. And like looking at these like kind of darker sides of humanity is like super interesting to me. And it's always been, you know, the stuff that's off limits has always been like very enticing to me, especially growing up religious. Oh yeah. And having that, you know, so.
My dad was clean freak.
Yeah?
Yeah. So
the soil
we
tracking.
Share this in common. Yeah. We were like, grew up in this rigid anti-sex household, so you develop this flourishing, beautiful interest in exploring sex. I grew up in an absolutely rigidly neat freak household, so now I've like claimed the mantle of being constantly filthy, and there's nothing anyone can say to me about it.
I remember coming back to our place and you were growing those bugs.
I was growing bugs?
Or what were they? You had like those big things that were full of bugs in the house. Yeah. They were just like in the house, like in that room, and I was like, what the?
Cartons of bugs for biocontrol. I was like, there were ladybugs and grasshoppers.
Yeah,
that was true, and they made little scraping sounds.
And you had like, at one point, big things of like compost tea, basically, that you were like brewing, and like you were like, LOL, I sent you that thing where my sister drank the compost tea, right? Oh my God. She was fine, but she literally took a drink of it.
The number of people when I was posting on Instagram about making compost tea who were like, oh, you drink it? And I was like, not compost tea for me. Like, it's tea because you make it in the same way you make tea, but your plants drink it. Your soil drinks it.
Yeah.
I'm scared for us. But it was really fun. I loved that house because I had a huge basement where I could store things and experiment and get things dirty. And now I live in a very small apartment, and there's just like no space to just like safely have filth without it intruding on
the other stuff. Yeah. No, that house was awesome. That house was so good, and it had such like an interesting layout too. You could just like feel like you were walking around and flowing with like the front and the back and like all the areas. Like I love that. I like this house has that too.
My friends that moved in after me are moving out, and some other people are moving in from the back house now.
Oh, nice.
I miss it.
I miss that whole like vibe. I loved that back bungalow that I lived in. There just wasn't any AC.
Yeah,
and so
that's brutal.
It was brutal.
That was brutal in the front house too.
Yeah.
Not being able to have any temperature control was really hard.
Yeah.
I have central air in my apartment now, and it's very hard to give up.
We do
but
too.
Speaking of tea, by the way, when we're off mic, I have some tea to give you.
I can't wait. We're gonna get off. Also, I have to tell you, because I think this is interesting, because you said the comparison earlier about our households. So of like you being the clean freak household and then where you are now, my house, this is the craziness about like the way I was raised, is my parents definitely weren't anti-sex. They were very like pro-sex within the confines of marriage.
Right. Got it.
So like my parents were very sexual. Like my parents were very like showing affection sexually to each other. Like, you know, my dad would always be like grabbing my mom's butt and like, you know, doing stuff like that. And he would always be like, oh, your mom's so sexy. Like, you know, there was so much like celebration of like sexuality within marriage, like that I felt from my parents.
There were just rules around where it was appropriate to be expressed. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that was like always my issue, was being like, oh fuck, like I'm having premarital sex. Oh my God. Like premarital sex. I love the meme that went around a couple years ago. It was like premarital and da-da-da. So it would be like premarital and this, and like a picture of like a joint, or like premarital and like compost, you know? Premarital in a compost pile. Sounds like a great day.
I feel, yes. Hey.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that is burning in your heart to share? Burning aches?
Compost is a great antidote to a perfectionist, high pressure world. It is great for those of us who feel like we always make mistakes and always fail and always mess things up, because the compost pile just, that's kind of the point of it. It's there to be like messy, imperfect, imprecise, and it just figures itself out, and everything breaks down and makes compost anyway. It's just such a let off. It's so nice. I really recommend everyone get into it.
I love it, and I'm really enjoying it, and it fucking decreases your waste so much. Like, we barely ever take out the trash these days, because like most of the trash is going into the compost, and including like recycling, including like you know, cardboard and stuff is going back there. So it's fun.
Yeah. I have a secret compost in my apartment because I got in trouble for container gardening in the back, blah blah. There's really strict rules in my apartment. So I built a little tiny compost behind the fence where you can't see it, and I just like sneak back there, and I have my secret compost, and I sneak back in.
I love secret compost. Okay, well, I will link to all of your stuff in the show notes, because if anyone wants to learn how to compost, you have amazing resources.
Thank you for listening to The Ache. This podcast is produced by myself, Corrin Evans, and Alexis Murphy. All the music you hear is original compositions by my friend Peter Colombo. All other pertinent information will be linked in the show notes, and thank you for listening.